Rain lashed against the corrugated roof of the clinic, sounding like bullets. A sound Corporal Jessa Malloy knew too well. She wasn't a woman. She was a weapon. A war dog for the Sterling Pack, bred to kill and trained to obey. But tonight, she was just prey. Blood slicked her combat boots, and her hands shielded her swollen belly as she stared at the one door she had no right to open. The man inside was the Omega her squad had tormented for years. He should hate her. He should leave her to die. But when the Alpha King's black SUVs scream down the highway, the secrets hidden in this tiny clinic won't just destroy a pack, they will rewrite history. The storm outside was biblical. It was the kind of deluge that washed away scents, tracks, and sins, which was the only reason Corporal Jessa Malloy was still alive. Inside the sanctuary for displaced Omegas, located 10 miles off the main highway near Seattle, Dr. Tobias Stern was trying to calibrate a centrifuge. The power flickered, casting the sterile white room into momentary grey darkness. Tobias Toby, to the few friends he had left, sighed, pushing his wire-rimmed glasses up his nose. At 26, he looked older. His sandy hair was thinning slightly at the temples, and his eyes, a soft, sad hazel, held the weight of a wolf who had been told his entire life that he was bottom tier. He wasn't a fighter. He was a fixer. And right now he was fixing a generator that was about to quit. Thud. It wasn't the thunder. It was a wet, heavy impact against the reinforced steel of the front clinic door. Toby froze. His wolf, usually a dormant, skittish thing, pricked its ears. The scent hit him through the ventilation drafts before he even moved toward the security monitor. It was a smell of ozone gunpowder wet dog. And fear. Bitter, acrid fear. He walked to the door, his heart hammering against his ribs. He checked the grainy black and white feed of the security camera. A figure was slumped against the frame. They were wearing tactical gear, black Kevlar heavy boots, the insignia of the Sterling private military company sipped off the shoulder. A war dog. The Sterling Pack didn't have warriors. They had soldiers. They rented their wolves out for Black Ops missions overseas. They were the most feared pack in the Northern Hemisphere. Toby unlocked the deadbolt. It was a risk, but he was a doctor first, an outcast second. He swung the door open. The wind howled, blowing rain into the foyer. The soldier fell forward, and Toby caught her. She was heavy built, of dense muscle and grit, but she felt fever-hot. When she lifted her head, the lightning illuminated a face Toby hadn't seen since high school graduation. The scar running through her left eyebrow was new. The desperation in her eyes was new. But the face was unmistakable. Jessa. Toby whispered the name, tasting like ash. Jessa Malloy, the captain of the varsity wrestling team, the girl who had watched silently while Commander Rexford Sterling's son, Brock, shoved Toby into lockers. She had never thrown a punch at Toby, but she had never stopped one either. She was the iron bitch, the untouchable war dog in training. "Stern," she rasped. Her voice was wrecked, like she'd been screaming for hours. "Help!" Toby stiffened his instinct to slam the door, warring with his oath as a healer. "Why should your Sterling property, Jessa? If you're here, he's looking for you." "He is." She choked out, her hand clutching his scrub top, staining the blue fabric with dark red mud. "He's coming to kill it, Toby. Please!" Toby looked down. For the first time, he noticed the tactical vest was unzipped. Under the wet, blood-soaked t-shirt, her abdomen was distended. A round, hard curve. She was pregnant. Heavily pregnant. "I need a place to hide," Jessa pleaded, her knees buckling. I need an Omega's protection." The irony was sharp enough to cut glass. A war dog bred for dominance and violence, begging a rejected Omega for sanctuary. "Get in," Toby said, his voice hard, "before you bleed out on my rug." He hauled her inside, kicking the door shut and locking it. As he dragged her toward the trauma bay, he saw the trail she left behind. It wasn't just rain. It was amniotic fluid mixed with blood. "You're in labor," Toby said, his professional mask sliding into place. "How far along?" 34 weeks, she grunted as he lifted her onto the gurney. She hissed in pain, her claws extending, involuntarily shredding the paper sheet. They tried to induce it early. To terminate. Toby froze while cutting away her pant leg to find a vein. "Terminate at 34 weeks, that's murder." Jessa stared at the ceiling tiles, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes, mixing with the grime on her face. Not to Rexford Sterling. To him, it's just a defective unit. Toby inserted the IV with practiced ease, but his hands were shaking. "Who is the father, Jessa?" She turned her head, looking at him with eyes that were terrifyingly hollow. "Brock," she whispered. "Brock Sterling. The heir." Toby felt the blood drain from his face. Brock Sterling. The man who had made Twabi's life a living hell. The man who was now the alpha of the military faction. If Brock was coming, this wasn't a medical emergency. It was a siege. Toby worked in silence for 20 minutes, stabilizing her vitals. He administered a tocolytic to try and halt the contractions, though he knew it was a long shot. Her body was under immense stress. Jessa lay on the gurney, stripping off the soaking wet tactical gear until she was left in a sports bra and torn cargo pants. The transformation was jarring. Without the armor, she looked smaller, human. The scars on her arms and back told a story of a decade of violence. "Why?" Toby asked, turning from the sink, where he was scrubbing up. "Why come to me? There are a dozen pack hospitals between the base and here." "Pack hospitals report to the Alpha," Jessa said, her voice stronger now that the fluids were hitting her system. "You're rogue, disconnected. And," she hesitated, looking down at her hands, "you were the only one smart enough to disappear." "I didn't disappear, Jessa. I was exiled. There's a difference." Toby walked over to check the fetal heart monitor. The rapid whoosh, whoosh, whoosh filled the small room. It was a strong heartbeat. A fighter. "They bred us," Jessa said suddenly. Toby paused. "What?" "The war dogs. Me. The others in my unit." Jessa's eyes went distant. It wasn't just training, Toby. It was eugenics. Rexford wanted soldiers who felt no pain, who obeyed without question. He paired us off like livestock. When Brock took an interest in me, Rexford was pleased. He thought they'd get a super soldier heir. "So what changed?" Toby asked softly. "The gene scan." Jessa spat the words out. "They did an amniocentesis yesterday. The pup. The baby. It didn't show the alpha markers. It didn't even show beta markers." Toby looked at the monitor, his heart skipping a beat. "It's an Omega." Jessa nodded, a sob breaking through her iron composure. "A male Omega. To Rexford, that's worse than a defect. It's an insult to the bloodline." Brock went into a rage. He ordered the medics to flush the system. He said he wouldn't let a runt bear the Sterling name. Toby felt a cold rage he hadn't felt in years. He looked at Jessa, this woman, who had once seemed so invincible, now reduced to a fugitive because her child wasn't useful enough for the war machine. "I broke the medic's jaw," Jessa said, a dark satisfaction in her tone. "Stole a jeep, drove until the tires blew, then ran the last 5 miles through the woods." "Tut-tut. You risked everything for an Omega," Toby said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "I risked everything for my son," Jessa corrected him, her eyes flashing gold, the color of a protective mother wolf. Suddenly, the clinic's landline rang. It was a stark, shrill sound in the quiet room. Toby stared at the red phone on the wall. Nobody called the clinic this late. "Don't answer it," Jessa whispered, gripping the rails of the bed. Toby waited. 1 ring, 2, 3. If he didn't answer, it looked suspicious. If he did, he had to lie perfectly. He picked up the receiver. "Hollow Creek Clinic, Dr. Stern speaking. Toby, old pal." The voice was like oil slicked over gravel. "Brock Sterling." Toby's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles turned white. "It's been 8 years, Brock. I assume you're not calling to schedule a physical." "Sharp as ever, the little bookworm," Brock chuckled. The sound was distorted by static and rain. "Listen, I've got a loose end situation. A rabid dog got off the leash. Dangerous. Mental break. She might be heading your way since you're the nearest. Charity case." "I haven't seen anyone," Toby lied, his voice steady. "Just storm damage." "Is that so?" Brock's voice dropped an octave. "Because my trackers picked up a heat signature crossing the ravine about 2 miles from your doorstep. Now, Toby, I know you're a bleeding heart, but this bitch is dangerous. She's carrying a parasite. We need to extract it to save her life." Toby looked at Jessa. She was shaking her head frantically, tears streaming down her face. "If anyone comes here, Brock, I have to report it to the regional council." Toby bluffed. "Standard protocol for rogue wolves. You call the council and I burn your little clinic to the ground with you inside it." Brock said, the pretense of friendliness vanishing. "I'm 10 minutes out, Toby. If she's there, you toss her out the front door. If I have to come in and find her, well, let's just say high school was a mercy compared to what I'll do." The line clicked dead. Toby hung up the phone slowly. 10 minutes, Toby said. Jessa tried to sit up, groaning as a contraction seized her. "I have to go. I can't let them hurt you. I can draw them into the woods." "You can't walk, let alone run," Toby snapped. He moved to the medicine cabinet, unlocking a heavy safe at the bottom. He wasn't reaching for drugs this time. He pulled out a heavy, matte black tranquilizer rifle and a box of silver nitrate darts. Jessa's eyes widened. "You have weapons." "I treat rogues, Jessa. Sometimes they don't want to be treated." Toby checked the chamber. "I'm not the scared kid you watched get shoved in the mud anymore. Toby, it's a kill squad. You can't fight them." "I don't intend to fight them," Toby said, moving to the window and shutting off the interior lights, plunging them into darkness. "I intend to hold them off." "For how long?" Toby looked at his watch. "I have a panic button. It alerts the highest authority in the territory. I pressed it the second I saw your tactical vest on the camera." "The local sheriff works for Brock," Jessa said hopelessly. "I didn't call the sheriff," Toby said, walking back to her side and placing a hand on her shoulder. "My clinic is funded by a private grant. The panic button goes directly to the donor." "Who is the donor?" Jessa asked. Toby looked out into the rain-swept darkness, where headlights were already cutting through the trees at the bottom of the hill. "King Alaric Blackwood," Jessa gasped. "The Alpha King. The ruler of all packs. He was a myth to people like her, a distant figure of judgment. Why would the king fund a clinic for Omegas? Because, Toby said, cocking the rifle, he owes me a favor. Let's hope he pays his debts faster than Brock drives. Outside, the roar of engines grew louder. Heavy doors slammed. The hunt was here. The headlights cut through the clinic's front blinds like searchlights in a prison yard. Toby Stern didn't flinch. He moved with a terrifying economy of motion, extinguishing the lights in the trauma bay until the only illumination came from the green rhythmic spike of the fetal monitor. "Protocol 9, Toby muttered to himself. "What?" Jessa gasped, clutching her stomach, as another contraction ripped through her. "When I built this place, I assumed one day a jealous mate or a drug-addicted rogue would try to break in for meds," Toby explained, moving a heavy steel cabinet in front of the door. "So I reinforced the walls with Kevlar lining, and the glass is bullet-resistant polycarbonate. It won't stop a tank, but it will stop an alpha throwing a temper tantrum." Outside, the heavy thud of boots on the wooden porch echoed like thunder. "Toby!" Brock's voice boomed, no longer distorted by a phone line. It was deep, commanding the voice of a man used to people wetting themselves when he spoke. "Open up! Don't make me damage your property value." Toby knelt beside Jessa. "Stay low. If they fire, the rounds shouldn't penetrate, but glass fragments might spall off the inside." "Give me a weapon," Jessa hissed through gritted teeth. Sweat matted her hair to her forehead. "If they get in, I won't let them take him." Toby hesitated, then pulled a scalpel from a sterile packet and pressed the cold steel into her hand. "If it comes to that, aim for the femoral artery. Inner thigh. Use the bleeding to buy time." Smash. Something heavy, a tire iron, likely slammed into the front door. The lock held, but the wood frame groaned. "You're making a mistake, Brock," Toby shouted toward the door, his voice surprisingly steady. "I have cameras streaming to an off-site server. Everything you do is being recorded." "I own the servers." Brock laughed, a cruel barking sound. "Boys, take the windows." Toby raised the tranquilizer rifle. He wasn't a soldier, but he was a surgeon. He knew exactly where to place a needle to drop a 300-pound wolf in 10 seconds. The window to the waiting room shattered. A sterling soldier wearing a balaclava vaulted through the broken pane, clearing the jagged glass with ease. He landed in a crouch, growling low in his throat. Toby didn't hesitate. He exhaled and squeezed the trigger. "Foot!" The dart hit the soldier in the neck, right over the jugular. The man reached up, confused, pulling the silver-tipped dart out. He took one step, his eyes rolling back, and collapsed face first into the linoleum. "One down," Toby whispered, his hands trembling slightly as he worked the bolt action. "They'll flank us," Jessa warned, her voice tight with pain. "They always flank. Check the rear exit." Toby cursed. The back door. It was steel, but the lock was standard. "I need you to be quiet," Toby said, moving toward the hallway that led to the back. "Can you do that?" "I'm a war dog," Jessa groaned, gripping the bed rails until the metal bent. "I can suffer in silence." Toby moved into the dark hallway. The rain pounded on the roof, masking the sounds of movement outside. He pressed his back against the wall, listening. The doorknob turned, slowly. Then a violent kick. The door flew open, banging against the wall. 2 soldiers rushed in. Toby fired blindly into the doorway. The first dart went wide, embedding in the doorframe. The second soldier lunged, tackling Toby before he could chamber another round. The impact knocked the wind out of him. The rifle clattered away. Toby hit the floor hard, the soldier's heavy forearm crushing his windpipe. The smell of wet wolf and stale tobacco filled his nose. Got the little rat, the soldier yelled back to his partner. Toby gagged, clawing at the arm. He was smaller, weaker, an omega against a trained beta soldier. Biology said he should lose. But Toby knew anatomy. He jammed his thumb hard into the cluster of nerves just under the soldier's armpit, the brachial plexus. The soldier roared, his arm going numb and useless. Toby bucked his hips, throwing the man off. He scrambled for the rifle, but the second soldier was already there, kicking it away. Toby looked up just in time to see a boot coming for his face. He rolled the boot, grazing his ear, and grabbed a canister of industrial disinfectant from the janitor's cart he'd been knocked into. He sprayed it directly into the second soldier's eyes. The wolf screamed, blinding chemical burning his retinas. Toby scrambled back, grabbing a heavy fire extinguisher from the wall. He swung it with every ounce of strength he had. Clang! It connected with the side of the blinded soldier's head. The man dropped like a stone. Toby stood there, panting, his chest heaving. He had taken down 2 sterling elites. He wiped blood from his lip. Toby. Jessa's scream from the other room was different this time. It wasn't fear. It was the primal sound of the crowning. "I'm coming!" Toby yelled. He ran back to the trauma bay, stepping over the unconscious soldier in the waiting room. But as he entered the room, the front door finally gave way. The wood splintered and cracked down the middle. The door was kicked in, hanging off its hinges. And there, framed by the storm, stood Brock Sterling. He wasn't wearing tactical gear. He was wearing a bespoke suit, soaked through by the rain, the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms covered in tattoos. His eyes glowed a vibrant, unnatural red, the sign of an alpha on the verge of shifting. "Well," Brock said, stepping over the debris, looking at the unconscious man on the floor. "I have to admit, Toby, I'm impressed. You actually grew a spine." He looked past Toby to the woman on the gurney. "Hello, darling." Brock grinned, his canines lengthening. "Honey, I'm home." The air in the room felt heavy, charged with the oppressive pheromones of an angry alpha. It was a biological weapon designed to make omegas submit and betas cower. Toby felt the instinct to bare his neck, to drop to his knees. His knees shook, but he locked them. He stood between Brock and the gurney. "Get out of my way, Stern," Brock said, his voice dropping to a growl. "This is family business. This is my clinic," Toby said, his voice surprisingly firm, despite the terror gripping his heart. "And she is my patient. She is my property," Brock roared, spit flying from his lips. He took a step forward, and the pressure in the room intensified. "She is a broken tool carrying a defective product. I am doing the pack a favor." "He's your son!" Jessa screamed from the bed. She was propped up on her elbows, the scalpel held in a white-knuckled grip. Her face was pale sweat dripping from her chin. "He's your blood. He's a runt," Brock snapped, looking at her with pure disgust. "An omega male. He'd be the laughing stock of the council. I won't have my legacy tainted by your weak genetics, Jessa. I told you I needed a warrior. You gave me a waste of space." Toby saw Brock's muscles bunch. He was going to lunge. "If you touch her," Toby said, reaching into his pocket, "you'll never get what you want." Brock paused, tilting his head. "And what is it I want besides her dead? The encryption key." Toby lied. It was a desperate gambit. "I scanned the fetus's DNA. I uploaded the results to the cloud. If my heart rate monitor stops, if I die, it auto-sends to the Genetic Council. They'll see you killed a viable pup. That's a capital offense in the treaty, Brock. Even for you." Brock narrowed his eyes. "You're bluffing." "Try me," Toby said. You killed a council member's nephew in a bar fight 3 years ago and covered it up. Do you want them looking into your records?" For a second, doubt flickered in the Alpha's eyes. That second was all Jessa needed. She let out a guttural, earth-shattering scream. It wasn't a scream of terror, but of effort. "Toby!" she shrieked. "The head!" Toby turned, ignoring Brock for a split second, rushing to the foot of the bed. "Push Jessa one more time." "Don't you dare!" Brock snarled, realizing he was losing control of the situation. He lunged. Toby didn't look up. He caught the small, slippery body as it slid into the world. A cry filled the room. A high, thin wail. It was the most beautiful sound Toby had ever heard. Brock was on them. He grabbed Toby by the back of his scrubs and hurled him across the room. Toby crashed into the metal instrument trolley glass vials, shattering underneath him. He groaned, pain flaring in his ribs. Brock stood over the baby, who was lying on the sterile drape between Jessa's legs. The Alpha raised his hand, his claws fully extended, looking like serrated knives. "No." Jessa tried to sit up, slashing with the scalpel. Brock backhanded her, without looking. The blow was heavy. Jessa's head snapped back, and she slumped onto the pillow, dazed blood trickling from her mouth. "Disgusting," Brock sneered, looking down at the crying infant. "Goodbye, little mistake." He brought his hand down. Boom! The sound wasn't thunder. It was the sound of the entire front wall of the clinic exploding inward. Debris flew everywhere. Brock covered his face, stumbling back as a chunk of drywall hit him. The wind roared into the room, swirling with rain and dust, and through the hole in the wall, blinding white floodlights from outside turned the night into day. A voice, amplified by a loudspeaker, shook the very foundations of the building. It wasn't a shout. It was a command that vibrated in the marrow of every wolf's bones. "Submit!" Brock froze. His eyes went wide. His alpha aura, previously so suffocating, vanished instantly, crushed under a power 1,000 times greater. Two figures walked through the dust and rain. They wore grey tactical suits, sleek and unmarked. Royal guards. They moved with unnatural speed, flanking the entrance. Then a third man walked in. He was tall, wearing a simple black trench coat over a dark suit. He didn't look like a soldier. He looked like an emperor. His hair was silver, not from age, but from lineage, the mark of the purest bloodline in history. His eyes were not red or gold or hazel. They were violet. King Alaric Blackwood. He stepped into the ruined room, his polished shoes crunching on the glass. He didn't look at Toby. He didn't look at Jessa. His eyes were locked on Brock Sterling. King Alaric. Brock stammered, his bravado dissolving into pathetic fear. He retracted his claws, holding his hands up. This is a misunderstanding. Internal pack business. I was just... Alaric moved. It was a blur. One second he was at the door, the next, his hand was wrapped around Brock's throat, lifting the massive Alpha 2 feet off the ground. "You were just about to strike a newborn," Alaric said. His voice was calm, which made it terrifying. "And worse, you ignored a direct cease and desist order from the Crown." I didn't know." Brock choked, clawing uselessly at the king's hand. "Ignorance is not a defense," Alaric stated. He looked over at Toby, who was struggling to sit up amidst the broken glass. "Dr. Stern," Alaric said, his tone softening slightly. "Is the child alive?" Toby scrambled to his feet, ignoring his broken ribs. He ran to the gurney. The baby was red, squalling and waving tiny fists. "He's alive," Toby choked out, wrapping the baby in a sterile towel. "He's perfect." Alaric turned back to Brock. The violet eyes flared with power. "You called this child a mistake," Alaric whispered to the gasping Alpha. "But you are the one who has erred, Brock Sterling. You trespassed on a sanctuary under my protection. You assaulted a healer, and you attempted filicide." Alaric tightened his grip. There was a sickening crunch. Brock's eyes rolled back. Alaric dropped him. The Alpha fell to the floor, gasping for air, clutching his crushed windpipe, alive but broken. "Take him," Alaric ordered the guards. "He will stand trial before the High Council." As the guards dragged the whimpering Brock away, Alaric walked over to the gurney. He looked down at Jessa, who was regaining consciousness, and then at the bundle in Toby's arms. The king reached out a finger and touched the baby's cheek. The crying stopped instantly. The baby cooed, grabbing the king's finger. Alaric smiled a rare, genuine expression. "An Omega," Alaric murmured. "The rarest of gifts. The Sterlings were fools." He looked at Toby. "You pressed the button, Tobias." "I did, Your Majesty," Toby said, bowing his head. "You saved 2 lives tonight," Alaric said. "But the danger isn't over. Rexford Sterling will not take the arrest of his son lightly. He will come for you. He will come for the child." Alaric looked around the ruined clinic. "Pack your things, Doctor. You and the girl are coming with me to the royal palace." Toby looked at Jessa, then at the baby. His quiet life in the woods was over. "Yes, Your Majesty," Toby said. But as he looked at the baby, he realized something. The drama wasn't ending. It was just beginning. Because as the baby opened its eyes, they didn't reflect the hazel of an Omega or the brown of a Beta. They flashed with a deep royal violet. Toby's breath hitched. That's impossible. Unless Brock wasn't the father. The royal palace wasn't a castle. It was a fortress disguised as a museum. Dr. Tobias Stern sat in the back of an armored SUV, the leather seat softer than any bed he'd slept in for the last 5 years. Across from him, Jessa Malloy dozed fitfully, her head resting against the bulletproof window. The baby, now cleaned and wrapped in a blanket embroidered with the royal crest, slept in a secure bassinet between them. They had been driving for 2 hours, leaving the storm-ravaged coast for the high-altitude stronghold of the Blackwood dynasty. Toby watched Jessa. Even in sleep, she looked ready to fight. Her hand twitched near her hip, searching for a weapon that wasn't there. The war dog programming ran deep. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a survivor of a brutal psychological experiment. "Stop staring, Stern." Jessa murmured, her eyes still closed. "I can smell your anxiety. It smells like sour milk." Toby managed a weak smile. "Occupational hazard. I'm worried about infection. You gave birth in a clinic that had a hole blown in the wall." Jessa opened her eyes. They were clearer now, the frantic desperation replaced by a steely, cold resolve. "We're alive. That's enough." "Is it?" Toby whispered, glancing at the partition separating them from the driver. "King Alaric didn't bring us here to be guests, Jessa. He brought us here because we're evidence." Jessa looked down at the baby. "He's evidence. I'm just the vessel." "About that?" Toby leaned forward, dropping his voice. "Back at the clinic, when the baby opened his eyes. Did you see it?" Jessa stiffened. "See what? The color," Toby pressed. Jessa Omegas have hazel or green eyes. Betas have brown or blue. Alphas have red or amber. The royal line, the Blackwoods, they are the only ones with violet eyes. Jessa's face went pale, draining of blood so fast, Toby thought she might faint. You're imagining things. It was the lighting, the flashlights. I'm a doctor. I know what I saw, Toby said. If that baby has royal markers and Brock Sterling is the father, that means the Sterling pack has been doing something impossible. Something illegal. Jessa looked away, staring out at the passing iron gates of the palace. There are things about the breeding program I never told you. Things they did to us before the insemination. Before Toby could ask more, the car slowed. They had arrived. The palace underground garage was a hive of activity. As soon as the doors opened, a team of royal medics swarmed them. They weren't the rough field medic types Jessa was used to. These were silent, efficient professionals in white coats. The mother and child require immediate isolation, a lead doctor stated, checking Jessa's pupils. King's orders. No isolation, Jessa snarled, slapping the doctor's hand away. Her growl echoed off the concrete walls. I stay with the pup. I stay with Stern. The doctor looked affronted, but a deep voice cut through the tension. Grant her request. King Alaric stepped out of the lead vehicle. He looked impeccable, not a hair out of place, despite having crushed a man's windpipe less than 3 hours ago. Bring them to the East Wing guest quarters, Alaric commanded, but place a Praetorian guard at the door. No one enters. No one leaves. Especially not the press. The suite they were taken to was larger than Toby's entire clinic. It had marble floors, silk drapes, and a view of the sprawling capital city. But the windows were sealed shut, and the door locked from the outside. It was a beautiful cage. Toby spent the next few hours doing what he did best working. He checked Jessa's stitches, monitored her vitals, and set up a makeshift nursery in the corner of the sitting room. Jessa sat in a velvet armchair, holding the baby whom she had refused to name yet like a shield. You need to sleep, Toby said gently, handing her a bottle of water. I can't, Jessa whispered. If I sleep, I'll wake up back in the kennel. Back at the base. Toby sat on the ottoman in front of her. You're safe here, Jessa. Alaric is the law. Rexford Sterling doesn't care about the law, Jessa said, looking at Toby with haunted eyes. You don't understand, Toby. The Sterlings, they think they are the evolution. They think the royals are weak, obsolete. She pulled the blanket back slightly, revealing the baby's face. He was sleeping soundly. They gave us injections, Jessa confessed, her voice trembling. Every week. Vitamin shots, they called them. But they burned, like fire in our veins. And after the shots, I felt stronger, faster, but also angry. So angry. Toby's mind raced. Gene therapy performance enhancers. I think it was more than that, Jessa said. She looked up at Toby. One night I heard the scientists talking. They were laughing about Operation Cuckoo, about putting a bird in another bird's nest. Toby felt a chill run down his spine. Jessa, if they were trying to splice royal DNA into the Sterling bloodline using you as a carrier, then my son isn't just a baby. Jessa finished, tears finally spilling over. He's a biological weapon designed to usurp the throne. A heavy knock on the door made them both jump. The door opened, and King Alaric entered. He wasn't alone. Behind him walked a man in a sharp grey suit, holding a briefcase. He had the distinct, weaselly look of a royal prosecutor. Dr. Stern. Ms. Malloy. Alaric said, his face unreadable. This is Lord Stellan Vane, High Inquisitor for the Council. We need to talk, Vane said, opening his briefcase on the coffee table. He pulled out a document stamped with the red wax seal of the High Court. Rexford Sterling has formally petitioned for the return of his stolen property. He claims Ms. Malloy is a mentally unstable fugitive who kidnapped his grandson. He tried to kill the baby, Toby shouted, standing up. Brock tried to smash his skull in. Brock claims he was trying to perform an emergency extraction to save the mother from a difficult birth, Vane said smoothly, and that you, Dr. Stern, attacked him while under the influence of narcotics. That's a lie. Toby was shaking with rage. It is a lie. Alaric agreed, his voice calm. But Rexford has powerful friends on the council. He is spinning a narrative that I am harboring a terrorist. He is demanding custody of the child by sunrise tomorrow. Jessa clutched the baby tighter. He'll kill him. He'll dissect him. Alaric looked at the baby. Not if we prove the child is not his. The room went silent. What? Jessa whispered. If the child is a Sterling, Rexford has a legal claim under the Pack Rights Act, Alaric explained. But if the child is something else, then Sterling law does not apply. Alaric walked over to Jessa. He looked down at the infant. Open the blanket, the king commanded. Jessa hesitated, then peeled back the fabric. The baby shifted, waking up. He yawned, blinked, and opened his eyes. They were wide, clear, and unmistakably violet. Lord Vane dropped his pen. By the moons. Alaric didn't look surprised. He looked vindicated. We need a DNA test, Alaric said. Right now. If this child carries royal markers, Rexford isn't just fighting for custody. He is fighting a treason charge. And if he does have royal markers, Toby asked, his voice barely a whisper. What then? Alaric looked at Toby, his violet eyes hard as diamonds. Then we find out which royal grave the Sterlings robbed to make him. The royal infirmary was a place of cold chrome and blinding lights. It was located 10 stories underground, a bunker designed to survive a nuclear war. Toby stood behind a glass partition, watching. Jessa was seated in a medical chair, the baby in her arms. A robotic arm was gently taking a blood sample from the infant's heel. The baby didn't even cry. He just watched the machine with those eerie, intelligent, violet eyes. The sequencing takes less than an hour, King Alaric said, standing beside Toby. The king's arms were crossed, his posture rigid. You knew, Toby said quietly. You knew about the Sterling's experiments. I suspected, Alaric corrected. There have been rumors for years. The Sterling Pack soldiers were too fast, too strong, and too unstable. We thought it was steroids. We didn't think they were playing God with genetics. Jessa is the victim here, Toby said protectively. Whatever the test says, she didn't ask for this. In the eyes of the law, she is a carrier of contraband. Alaric said, his voice void of emotion. But in my eyes, she is a mother protecting her young. I will not let them hang her, Tobias. You have my word. Suddenly, the elevator doors at the end of the hall dinged. They slid open, and a wall of noise hit them. I demand to see the king. I demand access to my heir. Rexford Sterling marched into the secure wing. He was a giant of a man, older than Brock, but twice as terrifying. He wore a general's uniform, his chest laden with medals. Behind him trailed a phalanx of lawyers and 2 members of the High Council. Rexford, Alaric said, turning slowly. You are not authorized to be in this sector. I authorized myself, Rexford boomed. He looked at Toby with a sneer of recognition. And here is the accomplice, the Omega runt who stole my grandson. He saved your grandson, Alaric interjected, stepping between Rexford and Toby. From your son. Brock is emotional. Rexford waved a hand dismissively. He made a mistake, but the child is sterling property. The mother is AWOL. I am taking them both. Now. You will take nothing, Alaric said, his voice dropping to that dangerous vibrating command tone. Until the genetic audit is complete. Rexford froze. The color drained from his weathered face. Audit you have no right. That is a violation of pack privacy. It is a national security investigation, Alaric countered. Why are you so afraid of a blood test, Rexford? Is there something in that baby's veins that shouldn't be there? Rexford's jaw worked. He looked at the glass partition at Jessa and the baby. For a second, Toby saw pure, unadulterated panic in the old general's eyes. This is a witch hunt, Rexford snarled. I will have the council sanction you, Alaric. You think because you wear a crown you are untouchable. The sterling pack feeds your armies. We protect your borders. And apparently, Alaric said, you rob our tombs. A chime sounded from the console. The results were ready. A hologram projected into the center of the hallway. It was a rotating double helix color-coded for lineage. Blue for sterling, gold for wolf, and a thick pulsing vein of purple. The room went deathly silent. Lord Vane stepped forward, reading the data stream. His hands shook. The subject, the infant, Vane stammered. He possesses 40% sterling DNA, 10% maternal DNA. And the other 50%, Alaric demanded. Vane looked up his face, pale. It's ancient royal. Specifically, the bloodline of King Valerius the Conqueror. A collective gasp went through the room. King Valerius had been dead for 300 years. He was the most powerful alpha in history, a wolf of legend. You dug him up, Alaric whispered, turning to look at Rexford. You desecrated the royal crypts. You stole the DNA of the Conqueror and tried to splice it into your own lineage. Rexford Sterling didn't deny it. He straightened his jacket, his face hardening into a mask of arrogant defiance. Valerius was a Rexford spat. His blood was wasted in the ground. The Sterling line was strong, but we needed a boost. We needed a king who wasn't afraid to spill blood, not a diplomat like you, Alaric. You created an abomination, Toby said, his voice cutting through the tension. You tortured those women. You tortured Jessa. I created a god, Rexford roared, pointing at the glass. That boy is the future. He has the blood of the Conqueror and the strength of a Sterling. He is the true Alpha. He is an Omega. Jessa's voice rang out. Everyone turned. Jessa had exited the secure room. She stood in the hallway, holding the baby. She looked exhausted, battered, but she stood tall. What did you say? Rexford hissed. He's an Omega, Jessa repeated, walking toward the general who had treated her like a lab rat for 10 years. All that science, all that torture. You wanted a super soldier, but nature humbled you, Rexford. She lifted the baby. He looked at Rexford and blinked his violet eyes. He has the Conqueror's blood, Jessa said, a savage smile touching her lips. But he has an Omga's heart. He won't be a killer. He'll be a healer, a peacemaker. Everything you hate. Rexford's face turned purple with rage. Give me the thing! He lunged. It happened in slow motion. The royal guards were fast. But Rexford was a war dog general. He moved with impossible speed, his hand reaching for Jessa's throat. Toby didn't think. He didn't calculate. He threw himself in front of Jessa. Rexford's claws, meant for Jessa's neck, slashed across Toby's chest. Toby felt a searing hot line of pain. He flew backward, hitting the floor. Blood, bright and red, splattered across the pristine white tiles. "No!" Jessa screamed. Alaric moved. This time there was no mercy. He didn't just grab Rexford. He slammed the general into the wall with enough force to crack the concrete. "Treason!" Alaric roared, his voice shaking the building. "Attempted regicide! Attempted murder!" The king's violet eyes were glowing with a terrifying light. "Take him to the dungeon!" Alaric commanded the guards, holding the struggling Rexford by the neck. "If he speaks, gaggle him. If he fights, break his legs." As the guards swarmed Rexford, dragging the screaming general away, Jessa dropped to her knees beside Toby. "Toby! Toby, look at me!" Toby lay on the floor, clutching his chest. The blood was pooling fast. He felt cold. So very cold. Did I win?" Toby wheezed, trying to smile. "You idiot!" Jessa was crying, pressing the baby's blanket against Toby's wound to staunch the flow. "You jumped in front of a general. You're just a doctor. You're just a rejected Omega," Toby whispered, his vision blurring. "I know." Alaric was there, kneeling beside them. The king placed his hands over Jessa's, pressing down on the wound. "Medic!" Alaric shouted. "Get a gurney now!" Toby looked at the baby, who was peering down at him from the crook of Jessa's arm. The baby wasn't crying. He reached out a tiny hand and touched the blood on Toby's shirt. And then Toby felt it. A warmth. Not the cold of death, but a strange, vibrating heat radiating from the baby's touch. It felt like the sun coming out after a storm. Toby murmured, his eyes widening. "Jessa, he's not just an Omega." "Stay with me, Toby," Jessa begged. Toby's voice faded. "He's a conduit." Darkness took him. The first thing Toby was aware of was the smell. It wasn't the antiseptic tang of the clinic, nor the metallic scent of blood that had filled the hallway. It smelled like ozone and deep earth, like a forest right after a lightning strike. He opened his eyes. He was lying in a bed, draped in high thread-count Egyptian cotton, in a room that looked more like a 5-star hotel suite than a hospital recovery room. Sunlight streamed through a large window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. He tried to sit up and gasped. His chest felt tight, stiff. He looked down. A thick bandage covered his torso from collarbone to navel. "Careful, doctor. You lost 4 pints of blood. By all accounts, you should be dead." King Alaric was sitting in a wing-back chair in the corner reading a tablet. He set it aside and stood walking to the bedside. The king looked tired. The events of the last 24 hours had taken their toll, even on an alpha of his stature. "Jessa. The baby." Toby rasped, his throat dry. "Safe," Alaric said. "They are in the adjoining room, sleeping. They haven't left your side in 3 days." 3 days? Toby's eyes widened. "You were in a coma, Tobias. Rexford's claws missed your heart by millimeters, but they severed major arteries." Alaric paused, his violet eyes scrutinizing Toby. "Do you remember anything after you fell?" Toby frowned, searching the fog of his memory. "Pain. Cold. Jessa screaming. And then a touch, a tiny hand, and heat. "The baby," Toby whispered. "He touched me. It felt hot." Alaric nodded slowly. "Yes." The medics were baffled. By the time they got you to the operating table, the internal bleeding had largely stopped. Your arteries had begun to fuse back together. It was impossibly rapid cellular regeneration. "But how?" Toby asked. "I'm just an Omega. We don't heal like that." "You don't," Alaric agreed, "but the ancients did." Alaric paced the room, hands clasped behind his back. "We interrogated Rexford's head scientist before we shipped him to the Black Site prison. The Operation Cuckoo protocol wasn't just about splicing King Valerius's alpha DNA into a sterling host. They were trying to isolate the Genesis gene." Alaric stopped and looked at Toby. "History tells us Valerius was a conqueror. But the secret texts, the ones only the royal family can access, say his mate was an Omega named Elara. She wasn't submissive. She was his battery. She could take his excess aggression and transmute it into healing energy. She kept him sane. She kept him alive on the battlefield." Toby's mind reeled. So the Sterlings didn't just steal Valerius's DNA. They accidentally activated Elara's dormant genes. "They wanted the ultimate weapon," Alaric said, a dry smile touching his lips. "Instead, nature gave them the ultimate healer, a male Omega with the power of the ancients. He is a conduit for life energy. He jump-started your system, Toby. He saved you." The door to the adjoining room creaked open. Jessa stood there. She wasn't wearing tactical gear or bloodied scrubs. She was wearing soft grey sweatpants and a simple t-shirt. Her hair was clean, falling around her face, softening the hard lines of her jaw. In her arms, she held the baby. She looked at Toby, her golden eyes shining with an emotion she had never been allowed to feel before relief. "You're awake," she breathed. "Hey, soldier." Toby managed a weak smile. She walked to the bed, moving slowly, as if afraid she might break something in this quiet room. She sat on the edge of the mattress. "You took a claw for me, Stern," she said, her voice thick. "That was stupid." "Protocol," Toby wheezed. "Protect the patient at all costs." Jessa huffed a laugh, wiping a tear from her cheek. She shifted the baby so Toby could see him. The infant was awake, staring at Toby with those profound, impossible violet eyes. There was an intelligence there that went beyond mere infancy. "Does he have a name yet?" Toby asked carefully, reaching out to touch the baby's hand. The skin was warm, vibrating with a low, comforting hum. Jessa nodded. She looked down at her son, the product of violence and mad science, who had turned out to be a miracle. "Valerius," she said softly. "Leo for short. He won't be a conqueror like his namesake, but he will be strong." Leo. Toby tested the name. It fit. A lion's name for a lamb who could heal the world. King Alaric stepped forward. "The Sterling Pack has been disbanded. Their assets are seized. Rexford and Brock will never see daylight again. The trials will be public. The world will know what they did to you, Jessa, and to the others." Alaric looked at Toby. "And the world needs to know that an Omega doctor saved the Crown's most valuable asset. You are no longer rejected, Tobias. I am offering you the position of royal physician, and I want you to head the new research wing dedicated to understanding Leo's gifts." Toby looked at Jessa. They were an odd pair, a broken war dog and a nerdy, brave Omega. They had been thrown together by a storm and bound together by blood. "We'd have to move out of the woods," Toby said to Jessa. Jessa smiled, a real full smile that lit up her face. "I think I've had enough of the woods. I think it's time to live in the light." She placed her hand over Toby's, resting it on the blanket over his healing heart. The storm was finally over. The trial of the Sterling commanders dominated the news feeds for months, exposing the dark underbelly of pack militarization. The revelations shattered societal norms. The idea that an Omega could possess such ancient, potent power forced the Council to rewrite the genetic caste laws. Jessa Malloy testified against her abusers with a stoic strength that captivated the nation. She became an icon not of war, but of survival. Dr. Tobias Stern became the most sought-after physician in the territory, though he rarely took private patients. His time was dedicated to raising Leo alongside Jessa in their wing of the palace. They weren't a traditional mate pair. They didn't have the bite marks or the primal bond. What they had was something forged in fire, a deep, unshakable partnership built on mutual respect and shared trauma. They were the guardians of the violet-eyed boy who held the future in his tiny hands. Sometimes late at night, Toby would watch Jessa sleeping the baby curled against her chest. The two of them bathed in the soft moonlight. He would touch the scar on his chest, a reminder of the night the rejected Omega found something worth dying for, and in doing so, found a reason to live. Talk about a plot twist. From a stormy night in a backwoods clinic to the halls of the royal palace, Jessa and Toby went through absolute hell and back. It just goes to show you can never judge someone by their rank in the pack. The strongest alpha turned out to be the biggest monster, and the rejected Omega turned out to be the bravest hero of them all. And little baby Leo. I have a feeling we haven't heard the last of him. What did you guys think of that ending? Do you think Toby and Jessa should become official mates, or is their partnership stronger as it is? And what do you think Leo's powers mean for the future of their world? Let me know your theories down in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow, and share this video with a friend who loves a messy, action-packed shifter romance. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss the next saga. Until next time, keep howling.